Well, hello everyone. My name's Erin Burge, and I'm a professor of marine science at Coastal Carolina University in Conway, South Carolina. That's near Myrtle Beach, if you've been to this part of the state. Um, I'd like to start off with just thanking the Explore.org project and View Into the Blue, also Teens for Oceans and the Frying Pan Tower, and Frying Pan Tower's owner Richard Neal for working with me and together collaboratively on this project. It's been really exciting, and I'm looking forward to sharing some of what we're doing with the shark cam and barracuda cam with you guys today. So I guess I'll give you a little bit of a background about what my research is, what some of my interests are, and specifically why I'm involved in the shark cam project. So I have a background in biology. I went to the University of Kentucky and got a bachelor's degree there. Kentucky's kind of landlocked, as you probably know, and so from Kentucky I made my way over to the College of William and Mary, Virginia Institute of Marine Science. I worked on my PhD there for several years looking at interactions between a bacterium and a fish called the striped bass. Unfortunately, I don't think we're going to see striped bass on these cameras, but that's an important fish a little farther to the north. Finished up my PhD there at VIMS and then moved on to a postdoc position at the College of Charleston, which is in Charleston, South Carolina. And I worked at the NOAA Hollings Marine Laboratory while I was there. Since 2006, I've been an assistant and then an associate professor of marine science at Coastal Carolina, which I mentioned. Here at CCU, there's probably some of my students on watching right now, I hope. Students. And here at CCU I teach a variety of different classes, but they include marine biology, the ecology of coral reefs, which we teach every year down in Jamaica, and I'll talk a little more about that in a few minutes. And then a diseases and parasites course, where students really get a good introduction to doing research in a variety of different systems regarding parasites and diseases in both fish and invertebrates. As you guys are watching this, if you have questions about kind of what's going on with the cameras or any of the issues associated with the cameras, I'll be happy to try and jump in and add my 2 cents as we go. I was involved in the original deployment or installation of these 2 cameras out at Frying Pan Tower, and it's pretty exciting. I mean, I have to say that it was really a great experience to get to be involved in helping explore and View Into the Blue and others get these cameras out at the Frying Pan Tower. And so, as many of you, if you're here watching this right now, you've probably been watching the camera feeds, and it's really amazing the diversity of fish that we're seeing out on the 2 camera feeds when they're both up and running. I think I just got a question come in, so give me just a second. When you helped install the camera, did you see any sharks? So that's a great question. And I was hoping somebody was going to ask that. I actually put up a video on YouTube last night. I'm going to copy the link and put it into the chat box here on explore.org, and so you can check that out. The short answer is yes. We saw a lot of sharks and other big animals while we were doing the camera installation. So the link that I just put up should pop up for you there in just a moment. Shows really the area kind of right underneath shark cam. I think at one point it's kind of a rough video because we were moving around a lot, but you can see part of shark cam on the day of installation, and as you'll see, there were a lot of large animals in the area at the time. And I expect that as the waters start to warm up again this spring, that we're going to see a lot of large sharks, large grouper, and other just really cool fish diversity out there. So while you guys are thinking of other questions, I'll tell you a little bit more about some of the research that I do here at Coastal, and specifically as relates to the camera installations out at Frying Pan. So since 2008, in 2008, I got interested in using underwater video to look at fish assemblages. You can probably see the poster behind me on the wall. That poster kind of represents a lot of the common species that are of sort of commercial and recreational importance in the fishery here locally, and that's also a lot of the same fish that you're seeing on the cams if you're watching them pretty regularly. So back in 2008, I started working with a couple of guys, Jim Atack and Craig Andrews, And we got some funding from North Carolina Sea Grant to go out onto the continental shelf in the area of Frying Pan Tower and look at using video, underwater video, to really kind of get a better understanding of what populations of fishes are like out on these hard bottom habitats. It may not be obvious directly from the shark cam in particular, but the area directly under shark cam is what we call a hard bottom. And so this is an area where there's a lot of life. That hard bottom habitat it's kind of like a coral reef in a sense. It has a different kind of geological and biological background, but these areas really serve as magnets to bring animals that attach directly to the rock to the area, and then the fish and other invertebrates that are going to feed directly on them. So I saw another question just popped up, so let me read that real quick and I'll get back to you. What are the odds that we may see a great white at Frying Pan Tower? Yeah, I'm excited. I hope that something like that happens, and I think that the odds are decent. Let me say that. As you're probably aware, there's been a project initiated by OSearch over the last few years that's been putting tracking tags on large pelagic predators like great whites. There are a couple of great whites that have been in the vicinity of Frying Pan Tower over the last year since they've been tagged, and it really wouldn't surprise me if one day we do catch one on one of the tower cams. I think it's highly likely, especially this summer once the waters really warm up, that we're going to see a tiger shark, or maybe even more than one. Tiger sharks are relatively common in the area, and I've seen them out around Frying Pan Tower over the years, and I think it's likely that if you're watching on some maybe warm June afternoon, you may see a tiger shark swim by. So I'm hoping that that's going to happen and give us an opportunity to learn a little bit more about their behavior underwater. So as I mentioned a few minutes ago, I did help with the installation of the original tower cams out there, and I posted a video there a second ago that some of you may be clicking over to on YouTube to look at kind of what the environment immediately around the tower looks like. Another question just came in. What do sand tiger and sandbar sharks eat? Well, that's a good question. Those are by far the two most common species. In fact, they're the only two species of sharks that I'm aware of that we've seen so far on the tower cams. Sand tigers and sandbars typically are going to feed on fish. So as you guys are seeing on the cams themselves, there are lots and lots of fish out there. These two species of sharks are probably feeding on a lot of the same fish that you're seeing swimming in front of the camera. Now this time of year, because the water temperatures are lower than they are during the summer, we're probably not going to see predation events nearly as often as we would when the water's a little bit warmer later in the year. So since I'm getting a few questions here, I wanted to post another link. If people are interested, give me just a second and I'll pull that up. I've got another YouTube link here that I wanted to share with you guys, that you can go on over to that and see what it looks like. I'll post that down here in the comments for you. And this link will take you to some of the what was actually occurring when we were installing the cameras. The actual installation itself happened back at the end of August, and August 31st, as I recall. And so this is showing Jim Atack, who I mentioned earlier, and I moving the shark cam from the bottom adjacent to the tower over to the stanchion that it's attached to, and then a few seconds of actually attaching that onto the tower. So take a look at that. Pretty cool video, and it's a rough cut, but it gives you a sense of kind of what the conditions are like out there on a nice summer day. If you've been watching the cameras recently, of course, you've been seeing that the water clarity is pretty bad. It's murky and green at the moment. We've had a lot of storms in the last, well, about 2 weeks now, and we've got another one kind of coming today that have really stirred up the water and made it a lot more difficult to enjoy the fish swimming by. So I was kind of mentioning some of the research that I've been doing over the last few years, and I'll send you another link via the comments in just a second. But I first kind of got interested in using underwater video, and as I mentioned, kind of in the area around Frying Pan Tower several years ago. Working with Jim and Craig Andrews, we put together this project to basically put stationary underwater video at a variety of different locations around Frying Pan Tower, within 20 miles or so, both north and south of the tower. And we worked on that project for about 8 months, collecting video of these natural habitats, with the ultimate goal being to go out and use those videos to give us some insights on the populations of grouper that inhabit those areas. As some of you are probably aware, grouper are really important for commercial and recreational fisheries in addition to their ecological role. And so we wanted to use underwater video to see if we could use a non-extractive way to look at grouper populations. So I just got another questions popped up here, so let me share that with you guys. It says, does the tower structure create a different ecosystem than the surrounding areas? That's a great question. I hope some of my students are actually asking me these questions. These are great. So the tower itself really, it's a really interesting area. So the physical structure that is the tower is placed there because it's a topographic high. It's about 35 miles offshore, and as you might guess, most of the surrounding water is significantly deeper than where the actual tower is positioned itself. Frying Pan Tower, which you can visit if you want. Richard Neal, who I mentioned earlier, owns the tower, and he actually will have visitors out on the tower. It's really amazing. I was lucky to get to go out there for the camera installation, and if you're into adventure travel, you might really want to go check it out. I'll post a link to Frying Pan Tower here in a few minutes. But the tower itself, it does create kind of a different habitat, if you will. So in most of the surrounding area, there is, well, it's mostly sand. As you travel around over that kind of plain of sand on the continental shelf, what you see are these little oases of life that are, we call them hard bottoms or live bottoms. Some people call them reefs, but these kind of areas of higher relief, anywhere from just a few inches of rock outcroppings to, in some cases, a couple of meters, 6 to 7 feet of relief. Those areas represent really, really rich habitat for fish to be out in the area around Frying Pan Tower. And it just so happens, not coincidentally, that Frying Pan Tower itself is sitting on one of these ledges. If you check out the YouTube links that I posted a few minutes ago on the chat board below SharkCam, you can see what that surrounding area really looks like. So there was natural habitat there that's important for fish diversity in the area. But then when the tower came in the 1960s, it added a lot more three-dimensional relief. So if you ever get the chance to travel out to Frying Pan Tower or something like it, what you see is that three-dimensional structure that the legs and infrastructure of the tower represent is a real magnet for life. Around the tower legs itself, of course, you guys are seeing what's there on the video. But if we were to get a little closer to the actual structure and see what are the little critters that live in and amongst and attached to the tower legs, that's kind of a self-perpetuating system. Those legs serve as additional habitat for benthic creatures and other attached animals. They in turn serve as places to hide for even larger animals, and then all of that becomes food source for the more roving assemblage of fish and invertebrates that you're seeing on the towers at any one time. I'll pull up another link here. Oh, I just had another question come in, so let me take a look at that and see what if I can give you a good answer for that one. So the question was, are the seas always so rough this time of year? Yeah, I was talking to a couple of people involved in the project over the last week or so. As you may be aware, the Barracuda cam, the shallow water camera, which is moored about 10 feet or so from the water surface, basically broke. We've had kind of a malfunction with the camera because the seas have been so rough. And this time of year, yeah, the sea conditions are really bad. Kind of on average this time of year in the winter, February probably being about the worst seas that we see consistently over the course of the year, unless we have a hurricane. So that's really made it impossible for us to get out to Frying Pan Tower to fix Barracuda cam, get it repositioned and resecured safely so that we can turn that live feed back on and hopefully not have the equipment be damaged during the time that it's being sloshed around by the large waves that you're seeing out there. Another question that just came in, what are the schools of small fish that we see so often on the cam? So that's great. There's really one species of fish that is by far the most common one. If you've been watching some of the camera feed over the days or weeks before I'm talking to you today, if you're seeing kind of a long long skinny fish, which might be about 4 to 6 inches in length, and they are almost always in schools. That's a fish species called Decapterus punctatus, most likely that one. Decapterus, the common name for those are scads, and they're actually related. They are a jack. They're related to the amberjack, the really large fish that you see swimming by. And the common name for these guys besides scads is cigar minnows. So if you're a fisherman or you've ever gone out deep sea fishing before, you may have used cigar minnows for bait. So they're a really common schooling jack that occurs often around structure and over the continental shelf, and is a really important forage species for the larger predators that are in the area. If you were to look at the stomach contents of those amberjack that swim by, or the large grouper that you occasionally see on the tower cam, they're probably packed with those scads or cigar minnows that are swimming by in big clouds in front of the camera. And really that kind of gets to the point of what is that assemblage of fish out there? I mean, I had a great question just a couple of minutes ago about, does the tower structure create habitat for the fish that are out there? And it certainly does. One reason why the small scads or cigar minnows that you're seeing so many of are there is because of that three-dimensional structure. That particular species of fish feeds on plankton, and in fact, if you watch the cameras when they're in view, you'll often see them kind of like tilt. They'll tip their nose up a little bit, and what they're actually doing is selecting plankton out of the water column. The plankton are too small for us to see, but they can see them, and they're sipping them in as they swim by in large schools. Question just came in: why aren't you using filters on the cam to improve the colors? That's a good question. I'd have to say that I don't know. My guess is that it's related to how the cameras are designed or the way in which they turn within the housing. You also, of course, are going to run into the problem that a filter on a stationary camera, the light conditions are going to be changing as the day progresses, or as it goes from day to night, and so the usefulness of those filters will go down. So I'm not really sure. That's a good question, and maybe I can pass that one on to the camera developer and ask him the answer to that one. So I'll post a link for you guys. I've got it here just a second if you'll bear with me. Pull this one up, and this link is going to show a little bit of some of the work that we've been doing over the years in the wider area. Around, I mentioned this earlier, around Frying Pan Tower are these really important natural hard bottoms. Frying Pan Tower itself is built on one of these natural hard bottoms, but the surrounding area, really in that whole region of the continental shelf, has these natural reefs. And so if you check out the video that I just posted, it's called Swimming Through a Natural Aquarium, and this was a video that we put together with some of what I consider the highlights of the project, where we were using a stationary underwater video that we would move from location to location to look at fish populations on different hard bottoms in and around the immediate Frying Pan Tower area. As you watch through the video, you'll see a map actually of where Frying Pan Tower is in relation to the coast, if you were curious about where it is. Let's see here. So I just got a question pop up. What are some of the common invasive parasites in frying pans? So that's kind of a tough one. I do work on parasites, both in marine fish and in freshwater fish. I've been mostly working with kind of small marine fish parasites over the last few years, specifically related to some of the classes I teach. So I'm not sure about invasive parasites per se, but there is, you're probably aware, an invasive species of fish that's really important on these hard bottom ecosystems that Frying Pan Tower is representative of, and that's of course the lionfish. If you're watching this tower cam, you probably know a little bit about lionfish because it's such an issue of concern for people that care kind of about well, ocean health in a broad sense. Now, personally, I've never seen lionfish directly under the tower, but they should be there. And I know that if we were to go around and if you watch some of the videos I've been posting, the habitat, that natural hard bottom habitat, is actually perfect habitat for lionfish. And we see very large individual lionfish out on these hard bottom habitats in addition to large aggregations of them. off the area that is Frying Pan Tower, you're going to see just, I mean, it's amazing how many lionfish you'll see. I remember one dive that I did a couple of years ago during the summer where we went to a wreck that's kind of east of Frying Pan Tower, and within about 20 feet or so of the anchor line on that wreck, I could see 50 lionfish. All of them were really big. So it's just amazing how they've really proliferated in the area. And then, as you may be aware, they've spread really over the entire western tropical Atlantic. So a couple more questions have come in. So let me take a look at those. Well, this is a good one. So why have we seen almost no predation on the cams? Do most of the predators feed at night? So those are great questions. I've been wondering about this myself, and I know from doing some work on coral reefs down in Jamaica where we were actually hoping to document lionfish predation on native coral reef fish, that it's actually rare, a lot more rare than you might guess, to catch a predation event on camera. Despite what we see on things like National Geographic or the Discovery Channel where they show predation in the wild, the people who are getting those videos are spending, I can't even begin to guess how many hours trying to document those types of events. So I have seen one predation event on the shark cam. It was a couple of weeks ago, and it was, I guess maybe I could say more the aftermath of a predation event. A fish called the Spanish hogfish. If you've watched much of the camera feed, you've probably seen the Spanish hogfish. It's 6, 8, 10 inches long. Bright yellow, and it has kind of underwater, it looks like a gray kind of saddle across its back, and a pointy nose. So a yellow fish with kind of a gray saddle. That saddle is actually purple, but underwater it appears gray. One of those, which they're relatively common on this camera feed, swam up to the camera with a large for the fish, crab in its mouth. So it had probably just plucked that crab, maybe even from the base of the camera housing. And it swam by. But yeah, I've been wondering about seeing some predation events on the cam. The second part of your question was, do most of the predators feed at night? Now, nighttime, or what we would call crepuscular feeding, crepuscular means kind of in dawn and dusk. For some species of fish, those time periods are very important. But we should be seeing predation events at some point. So it could be related to the time of year or to the fact that the fish, they're just not feeding that at that high of a frequency that we're catching it on the camera. I mean, you have to remember that the camera is seeing a relatively limited field of view. So catching a predation event, it will happen, I think, but it's not that common yet. So another question has just popped up. What makes lionfish so detrimental to ecosystems? So these are great questions, by the way. You guys keep them coming, please. So I've done some work on lionfish primarily down in the Caribbean, where they're a lot more accessible than they are off the coast of North Carolina, although they've been off the coast of the Carolinas for a lot longer than they have been in the Caribbean. The prevailing wisdom, I haven't really done this type of work myself directly, but I'm familiar with it. The prevailing wisdom is that lionfish, because they're generalist predators, meaning that they'll feed basically on anything that they can get in their mouths. For example, I've seen lionfish with fish that were almost the same size as themselves sticking out of their mouths, swimming around on the reef down in Jamaica. And so because they can feed on such a wide array of different prey species, that makes most species that are of their size range vulnerable to predation. It also has to do with what we would call their life history. So life history kind of describes how an animal makes its living. In the case of lionfish, they have a strategy that we call R selection. Not to get technical about it, but basically R selected species put more effort, or more energy, is a better term, more energy into reproduction than they do into growth. So we can look at a fish like a lionfish, and you've probably heard that they can reproduce at a really rapid rate. So they feed heavily, and instead of growing bigger and bigger and bigger, they put that energy into reproducing more quickly, more eggs, and more baby lionfish out on the reefs. So the combination of a generalist predator and one who puts most of its energy into reproduction really has set the stage for this fish to be successful in a variety of different habitats that are really just united by having warm water and ample food. So these are great questions. Please do keep them coming. Related to lionfish, I wanted to share, if I can find it here. I've got a list of things I was going to put up for you guys. Another a video link here that shows some of the research, or actually not really research in this sense, but basically our interactions with lionfish down in Jamaica. I mentioned earlier that we see lionfish quite frequently off the coast of North Carolina and in the vicinity of Frying Pan Tower. But because of how far offshore that area is for us, it's really difficult to get out there to do active research. Most of the research on lionfish that's occurring kind of in North and South Carolina is actually happening up in Beaufort, North Carolina, with the NOAA lab and a bunch of researchers up there that are really interested in looking at the impacts of lionfish on local fish populations. So if you check out the link I just posted in the cam comments there below where you're looking at me, you can see some of what we've been doing down in Jamaica to understand the impacts of lionfish on coral reef fishes, which some of what you see on the tower cams are actually a subset of those coral reef fishes. So that's a good segue. I did want to point out some of the work that we're doing more specifically with with the shark and barracuda cams out at Frying Pan Tower. So since these were installed back at the end of the summer, myself and others have been talking about some of the research opportunities that the cameras really represent. I mean, if you're watching this feed today, you're probably interested in the cams because it's like looking at an aquarium, right? You get to see amazing animals in their natural habitat, and that's great. I mean, that's one of the things that really excites me about this project. But I'm also looking at it from the point of view of a scientist, and so what the camera installations really represent from that perspective is an opportunity for us to look at quantitatively what fish are present out at Frying Pan Tower. How do those fish assemblages change in terms of the species richness or the abundance of animals over the course of, say, seasonal changes and things like that. And so we're starting up a couple of projects here at Coastal Carolina University where I'm working with students to really data mine the footage that's coming to you that you're seeing on explore.org to look at the fish community and how it can change through time. Sort of in the longer term, we're hoping to get some more sophisticated scientific instruments too out of the tower that can allow us to look at influences like meteorological influences or current influences, the movement of water on the fish community over both short-term scales and long-term scales. So really the tower itself and the generous access that we've had to Frying Pan Tower is going to allow us to really answer some important scientific questions about fish communities on these really cool habitats, these hard bottom habitats that we've mentioned. So I see another couple of questions have popped up. Next one, oh, it looks like a couple more questions on lionfish. That's great. So the next question was, do lionfish have any predators in their invasive water or in their invasive range? And what eats them in their native waters? This is a great question, and it's been a question of scientific interest for quite some time about how this invasive fish got over here, and then whether any of the native predators are actually feeding on lionfish. So this has been debated for a while, and I know that there are a few instances where people have seen lionfish, for example, in the guts of large grouper. So it's certainly possible that fish like grouper, large snapper, some of the predatory sharks that you may be seeing on the camera feeds, and fish like that, primarily piscivorous fish, may actually be feeding on lionfish themselves. I've seen down in the Caribbean triggerfish feed on lionfish. There was a photograph that was circulating last year of a bird, an osprey, that actually caught a lionfish. So there are some predators that feed on them, but it appears to be primarily a learned behavior. So for example, in Belize, some of the dive operators in Belize have been working to get lionfish off their reefs by training the local grouper, in some cases even sharks, to actively seek out and hunt lionfish. And they've been doing that by spearing lions and then releasing them in front of the predator and kind of getting the predators used to feeding on those injured fish. Whether or not that's going to make a dent in the population remains to be seen. But the second part of the question was, what eats them in their native waters? Well, that's a great question too. There's really only one paper in the scientific literature that discusses a single predator on lionfish. It's likely, and that fish is called a cornet fish actually. The cornet fish we do have in the Atlantic as well as in the native range for lionfish in the Pacific. But my guess is, given what a cornet fish looks like, they look like a long skinny tube and they have kind of a small mouth. My guess is that they feed naturally on small lionfish, not on the adults that we're seeing, or the larger adults that we're seeing here in the Atlantic. In their native waters, it's certainly plausible to believe that the same fish that are beginning to eat them in the Atlantic, again, large grouper, large snapper, sharks, and triggerfish, for example, are going to feed on them in their native range too. One of the things that's kind of a related issue to predation on lionfish is the fact that in many cases fish populations are overfished. And so we, of course, when we fish, we typically target large individuals within a species or a complex of species of interest. And those larger individuals are the ones that are often the most fit in terms of their predation ability, their ability to reproduce, and so on. So it's really it's a complicated issue. Another question just came up. So somebody must have clicked over to the lionfish video that I put up where we were showing the harvesting that we were doing down in Jamaica a few years ago. And the person asked, they were curious if I've ever been stung by a lionfish. I have. It's not something that I enjoyed, and it's not something I would recommend to anybody. I've been stung once badly and 3 other times very minorly. The bad sting, it ruined my day, I'll put it that way. It actually happened out near Frying Pan Tower, and I had speared a really large lionfish, and in the process of tucking it into the bag to get it off the spear, I jammed it into my own hand. So that's how most people get stung, is when they're actually out there actively harvesting lionfish, they end up poking themselves. Yeah, but I don't recommend it. So another question just came up. Oh, this is great. Is there anything we as viewers can do to help make the data mining from the video archives more effective? That's really a great question. I've been given some thought to how can we involve the community. Those of you that are watching right now are that community. You wouldn't be here if you weren't interested in the cameras. So yeah, I think one thing certainly that you can be doing, and some of you are already doing this, is posting screenshots is actually really helpful. Because I've been using just the posted screenshots in the comment section for the cameras to get a sense of what species we need to be focusing on. For example, if there's 10 of you or 50 or 100 or 1,000 of you, obviously you're going to be a lot more able to watch more of the video than I am. I would love to just kind of sit and watch them, but I can't do that all day. I have to do a lot of other things. So keep that up. Posting those screenshots is really important, because you're going to see the rare fish, or you're going to see the rare turtle that swims by, and that gives us the opportunity then to go back in and look in particular for that species, but also to look whether or not the same individual might be showing up on the camera. I've seen from following the comments over the last few months that there's a what's it called, the spot-tailed pinfish. It's one that you guys see a lot of. The scientific name is Diplotus. It's the gray kind of roundish fish with a black tail. Really common on the cameras. And there's one that has a chunk taken out of its back. And I've seen several people mention that that particular individual fish swam by the camera again. I've seen that fish myself. So to get back to that question, is there anything that you as viewers can do to help with this effort? I'm thinking about it. So maybe we could trade contact information. I'm pretty easy to find. You have my name now. And so if you are interested, maybe send me an email or a message, and we can talk about ways that you might be able to get involved. I will say that, again, please keep posting those screenshots. They're immensely helpful. And just earlier last week, one of my students emailed me very excited. Maybe he's watching this right now. He caught pictures of a loon, a bird, on the Barracuda cam before it went offline. I scrolled back through the comments from that day's video, and somebody else had caught the foot of that loon swimming by and was asking what it was. So that type of stuff gives us pointers or information to go forward and say, okay, here's a rare fish that we haven't seen very much of. We can go back into the footage and learn more about what it's doing. So let's see here. A lot of you guys are probably wondering about, as we go forward, what some of the plans out at Frying Pan Tower are. And this is something that those of us that are involved in the Explore project with View Into the Blue and Teens for Ocean and Frying Pan Tower, this is something that we've been talking about a lot over the last weeks and months. So one of the things that's kind of on the horizon that I'm really excited about is we're looking for partners and funding to look at putting some more instrumentation out at Frying Pan Tower that would interface with the cameras. Specifically, we're looking to install some acoustic receivers out at the tower that would allow us to track fish as they move kind of away from the tower and then back into the vicinity of the tower. Really quickly, basically what we can do is we can implant tracking devices, acoustic tracking devices, into larger animals like some of the sharks that you're seeing or some of the large fish that are in the area, and then use both the cameras and the acoustic tracking instrumentation to look at how those animals utilize the habitat that Frying Pan Tower represents, and then the larger area out in the vicinity of the tower. And again, if you want to check out what the area around the vicinity of the tower looks like, if you scroll down through the comments that are popping up here slowly on the Shark Cam feed, down in the comments section, I've posted a few videos of what the area around that location looks like. Related to a question that we got a little bit earlier, I don't think I've mentioned yet about getting the community involved. One thing that I want to encourage you guys to keep doing is to keep posting these screenshots. And so my students and I, in my marine biology lecture class this semester, some of the students and I are putting together what we're calling a pictorial guide to the fishes of Frying Pan Tower. So we're using the camera feeds, we're capturing still images off the camera feeds just like you guys have been posting, and we're putting together just a little fact sheet about what each of those species, what it's called, what its scientific name is, what larger group of fish does it belong to, so what family is it in, and then a link to more information. Every day when I check in on the comment board, I'm amazed at the pictures that you guys are getting. So along the way, I'll probably be grabbing some of your better pictures with attribution, of course, and putting them into the pictorial guide as well. Once that's done, and once we have a good coverage of the species that are relatively common on the camera, I'll get in touch with Explorer about sharing that with them, and hopefully they'll be able to provide that as a resource for you guys out on the camera feed, I should say. So we're getting, let's see here. No new questions have popped up in the last few minutes. I see that one of the moderators is encouraging you guys to keep taking those screenshots. They are really helpful. Moving forward, of course, they just become more and more helpful. So you're going to see rarer fish as the seasons change, and I think those of you that are really actively looking at the cameras now are going to be amazed at what you're going to see over the summer. The diversity is going to go up. Right now, I think we're running around 30 or so species that are relatively common. What you're going to see in the summertime is that may double. We may see many more species as the water's warm. I know just from going back into the archived footage earlier in the fall when the water was still really warm that we were seeing a lot more species diversity. So that's pretty exciting, and that really, I think, tells us a lot about why this is such an important and interesting habitat. One of the pictures that popped up, I think just today, there were a couple of people that posted still images or screenshots of a fish that I've never seen in the wild before, and I think that's a blue line tilefish. I've seen a couple of pictures over the last month or so of what looked like a blue line tilefish to me at Frying Pan Tower. So that's pretty exciting. Like I said, that's a species I've never seen in the wild. So it's pretty cool to get to see them on the Explore.org camera. Trying to think of some other things that I can share with you guys as we wait for some more questions to come in. Oh, I will point your attention, I mentioned earlier that I helped with the initial installation of these cameras, and what a cool opportunity that was for me. I was also involved back in December with an installation that's not nearly as complex as this one, but was down in Acamal, Mexico. And so if you're interested, head over to the Teens for Oceans website, which is one of the partners on the shark cam that you guys are watching. I'll post a link to it in the comments section up here for you. If you head over there, they have a series of webcams that are streaming on their website, and that the specific project that I was helping with down in Acamal, Mexico, was in a bay down there where green sea turtles are relatively common. And there's an underwater camera there that I'm really hoping that I'm going to see a green sea turtle on here pretty soon. So that one, you could go check that one out, and you might see a sea turtle swim by. So it looks like another question's just popped up. Let me read that real quick. The question is about invasive species. So are there any other invasive species that we may see on the cameras or on the Cayman cam or any of the other Caribbean cams? So I know that on the Cayman cam, I haven't watched that one as much as I have the frying pan cam because this is where I live and I helped with the frying pan one. But the Cayman cam, I believe that they've seen some lionfish moving through the area. In terms of fish, that's by far the most likely invasive fish that you're going to see. There are a few other invasive fish in the Atlantic that occur in warm tropical waters, but to my knowledge, they really haven't spread and haven't become abundant like lionfish have. And but there are other invasive species that you may see, other invasive invertebrates that are possible to see, like on the Cayman cam. There is an invasive species at Frying Pan Tower that we don't really see it on the camera because it doesn't move, but that's actually a really large barnacle. It's called the Titan barnacle, Megabalanus. This one, if you kind of know what a barnacle looks like, they're often quite small, on the order of a centimeter or less, like a quarter inch or so, or a half an inch. Megabalanus can be 2 inches long. It's a much, much larger barnacle. It's bright pink. It's pretty readily apparent, and I've seen them growing on the legs of Frying Pan Tower when we've been out there doing work. Another question just popped up. So, will we see more sea turtles on Frying Pan Tower cam this summer? I think so. I did see somebody posted a screenshot at the end of the summer, or early in the fall, I should say, of a loggerhead turtle. I didn't see that one kind of in real time, if you will, but yeah, I expect that we will, especially on the Barracuda cam. It's likely that we'll see an occasional turtle. Immediately in the vicinity, and this again gets to the sort of larger habitat that's out there just around the tower, the ledges, those rocky, kind of craggy habitats that make up this larger hard bottom habitat. Those ledges are really important foraging areas for not just loggerhead turtles, but other species of sea turtles as well. And it's quite common for us to see turtles asleep under the ledge. So you're swimming by, you see something that's kind of smooth and a little unusual, you swim up to investigate what it is, and it turns out to be a really large adult turtle sleeping on the bottom, wedged under the ledge. So as those individuals move from kind of resting and foraging areas on live bottom back up toward the surface, I think we're very likely to get to see sea turtles on the shark or the Barracuda cam. So that's a good question. Thanks. I wanted to share with you guys another link. I mentioned this at the beginning in the thanks, and this is the link to Frying Pan Tower. So you might, if you're interested in learning a little bit more about Frying Pan Tower, the structure itself, there's a little section on the history of Frying Pan Tower, some of the opportunities that are available out at the tower, and just what it looks like. So Richard Neal, the owner of Frying Pan Tower, has some cool stuff up on that website. And again, the tower itself represents the physical structure that's supporting the camera infrastructure, and it's really a magnet for everything that we're seeing around the cameras. So it's pretty cool. There's one thing I wanted to return to that I mentioned earlier. I posted several video links, and I'd encourage you guys to go and check those out, and really just to congratulate you for being interested in what Explorer is showing on these cameras, and to try and translate some of that interest into ocean advocacy. I mean, part of the point here is that this is a way for people who maybe don't live near the oceans or don't have the ability to get out there and see what it's really like, for you to get involved in ocean-related issues. And I think that if you're here, you're probably already interested, but you might talk to your family or friends about issues kind of facing the oceans, ocean health, generally speaking, and encourage them to do what they can to help, because every little bit can make a difference. Hopefully a few more questions will come in. We've got just a couple of minutes left here, I think, in the talk. And I'd love to talk to you more about some of the things that, or answer some of the questions that you may have about what's going on out at Frying Pan Tower. Since this is kind of asynchronous, I can't see you, but you can see me. I can't sit here and be quiet waiting for you to talk, waiting for you to ask. So bring the questions on. I can share a little bit more detail about some of the other camera work that we've done out at Frying Pan Tower. I mentioned earlier that and posted a link for the still video project where we looked at grouper populations. But I just got a question, so let me take a look at that real quick. This is a good one. This is something that I've been thinking about. So the first part of the question is, are most of the sharks that we're seeing the same individual sharks? And I think that that is a really great question. And like I said, I've had the same question myself. I know that earlier in the year there was a large female sandbar shark, which the sandbars, if you're not really familiar with what they look like, they're the ones that are really prototypically sharky. They look fast and they look kind of scary. The other main species of shark that you're seeing on the camera, the sand tiger, they're scary looking too. They have big teeth, but they move much more sluggishly, where the sandbar shark is moving very aggressively, so to speak, through the water column. So we saw a sandbar shark earlier on the camera feed that actually had a torn dorsal fin. It had a chunk taken out of its dorsal. And I was wondering if we would see that individual again. And at least to my knowledge, I didn't see it again. But to get to your question, it's very likely that a lot of the individual sharks that we're seeing, especially the sand tiger sharks, that those are resident, or at least resident part of the year, out at Frying Pan Tower. Typically this time of year, when the water cools significantly, sand tiger sharks kind of aggregate on structures that provide them with food, and they're like meeting places. So most likely some of the individuals that we're seeing out there are, if not resident, at least frequent visitors to the area. With the sandbars, I don't know necessarily about any individuals, but it is likely that we're seeing the same individuals time after time over short periods of time, and then they may move off. As the water's warm, I expect back in the spring, I expect that we'll see a lot more transient fish, sharks and other migratory fish that are moving northward as the water's warm. There was a related question to, are we seeing the same individual sharks, and that was, do they remain in a specific territorial range? So I kind of touched on that. The idea, it depends. Within the species itself, some are going to migrate over longer distances, and some individuals are going to be more stationary, or more have a territory of their own. And then the third part of that question is, what is the likelihood of seeing other sharks besides sandbar and sand tiger? So this was something that if you tuned in the last few minutes or something, I touched on this earlier. I think that it's highly likely this summer that we're going to see a tiger shark, or more than one. Tiger sharks are, I don't want to say abundant, but are fairly common out in the area that Frying Pan Shoals and Frying Pan Tower represent. And so I think it's really likely that we'll see some tiger sharks later in the summer, once the waters have warmed back up to kind of a comfortable level for them. Another question just came in. Do the sharks common to Frying Pan Tower mate near the tower? That's a great question. I have no idea. There are some researchers who look at things like home ranges and mating areas, both nursery and mating areas for local shark species, but I'm not familiar with whether or not Frying Pan would be an area where mating may occur. I do know that on some of the hard bottoms in the area that we've seen very, very young tiger sharks. Last summer at an area about, I guess it was about 40 miles south of Frying Pan Tower, we saw a just tiny baby tiger shark. It was less than 3 feet long, and it was clearly just born. So that mother must have just pupped in the area. So it wouldn't surprise me, especially if pupping, or birthing the young was occurring out in the area. But as far as mating goes, I don't know. Here's another question that's just come up. Besides frying pan shoals, what other areas would be most interesting for a similar camera setup? That's a really good question. So off the coast, if you ever have a chance to kind of explore what the bottom looks like, and you can look like on Google Earth and stuff, there are map layers that will show you some of the topography of the wider continental shelf in the area. The farther off the coast you get, the more complex the habitat tends to get. So as you move offshore, these live bottom ledges that I've mentioned have greater and greater relief. So if near frying pan we have big ledges that might be a meter in relief, farther offshore, say twice as far or more than twice as far offshore, the relief of some of those ledges may be even greater. So it could be upwards of 3 meters or more. The more complex the habitat, the more that would be a really desirable place to have a camera. The main kind of challenge with doing like the frying pan tower installation is that you got to have infrastructure. So the cameras that you guys are watching, they're powered, right? They have power, they have data transmission. So at some random place out in the middle of the ocean, that would be a lot more difficult. There may be other platforms like frying pan tower that would potentially be good places to put cameras. I got a question here. Are any marine mammals ever seen on the cameras or in the area? So to my knowledge, we have not yet seen a marine mammal on the frying pan tower cameras, but I bet we will. I know that when we travel back and forth to frying pan tower or in the sort of wider area that portion of the continental shelf represents, that we always see dolphins. And certain species of whales are relatively common, if you can use common to describe a whale. But dolphins, certainly I expect that over the summer we'll see dolphins, either migratory ones or ones that are more resident on the cameras. So it wouldn't surprise me if they may even come up and interact with the camera, which would be really interesting. Looking at themselves in the shiny part of the camera housing would be pretty cool. I mentioned earlier, for those of you that have stuck around for a while, but to the people that are new, last week one of my students caught photograph or screen captures of a bird, a loon, who dove down to the barracuda cam and basically took a selfie. If you scroll down through the comments, you'll get to see that. And my guess is that bird was doing that because it could see its reflection in the camera housing. A related question to the question about dolphins: would we be able to hear dolphins from a hydrophone? And yeah, we could if we had the instruments to put out at Frying Pan Tower for research. If they were tuned correctly, we should be able to hear them with a hydrophone. I haven't done that kind of tracking work where you look at marine mammal movements before with hydrophones, but it should be possible. We can hear them underwater when we're scuba diving, so I would expect that you can pick them up with equipment like that. So there's just a few minutes left in the scheduled time for the talk. So if there are any additional questions that you've been kind of mulling over the last hour or so, please get them posted so that I can have a chance to answer you before I need to go. This has been really great, and while you're thinking about your questions, I'll just thank again Explore.org and View Into the Blue and Teams for Ocean and Richard Neal and Frying Pan Tower for this project and for this camera installation. I know that for me this has been a really exciting research and outreach opportunity to get to be involved in. And for those of you that are out there watching, the cameras are probably, they're fun. You get to see into a world that you may not have experience with, and that's pretty exciting. So I think that's been a great opportunity to get to collaborate with Explore.org. It looks like I think most of the questions that people were gonna ask have been asked. So I'd like to thank you, those of you that tuned in today for this web chat. And I really appreciate your time to come and ask questions and listen to what I have to say about this project. And again, I'll thank Explore.org and View Into the Blue, Teams for Oceans, and Frying Pan Tower for this project. It's really amazing. Thanks for your time, and keep posting those screenshots. Thank you.